like you, Bill. I just your mom. I know you're good. She's you. I love my mom and dad and my brothers and sisters.
I know that Christ lives and that he loves me. And I know beyond a shadow
of a doubt that Joseph Smith was a true prophet of God.
I know.
The worst I've ever seen personally was a girl that I believe I graduated from high school with her, but when she would get really focused on something, her upper lip would curl up into this sneer, but like the face she was making looked like she smelled like dog poop or something. Like she just would look so disgusted when she was just focused on something or driving or whatever the case may be. I remember when somebody told me that it happened. It was in the middle of a play that I was doing, and I was in the middle of some part. I don't know if it was a monologue or whatever it was, but I was up at the front and she's in the front row, and I see her and glance down at her, and she's just looking at me with this my interpretation was just, "You're awful, get off the stage." And it completely rattled me. And then they're like, "No, that she just does that. Like, have you not had a class with her?"
Hello and welcome to Beyond a Doubt. This is Elena, and we have Jonathan.
No, we don't. He's not here this week.
Jonathan's not here. This is my other boyfriend.
Oh.
Francisco.
Wow.
Well, so we have Phoebe here on the other end of the conversation. Say hi, Phoebe.
Hi, everyone. I'm glad to be here.
She's our interview for today. So, Phoebe, you actually said to me that you were listening to the relationship one, right? And
yes.
That's kind of... Mm-hmm. Now, this is actually a good lead-in, I think. I mean, the fact that we had that one and talked about a lot of women who've been through some disturbing things dealing with the priesthood holders of the church and their families. So you've had similar situations.
Yeah, so I can give a little bit of background as far as because when I heard your story, mm-hmm. there was a lot of similarities as far as you mentioned that you were boy crazy, mm-hmm. and I was completely boy crazy, mm-hmm. Especially as a young girl. Mm-hmm. Once I entered young women's, I was extremely boy crazy because you're like a 12-year-old girl and you're learning about temple marriage and you're learning that what the requirements are for, dating and all this stuff. And as a 12-year-old, it looks so romantic almost. It looks like this fairy tale type of situation that you're going to be with someone that God wants you to be with, and you're going to raise a family and you're going to be a mother and a wife. And it's super romantic the way that they make it sound. But because they're so, kind of cramming it down your throat that you need to be worthy to be a wife and a mother, of course, there's all that other stuff before you become a wife and mother, which is you have to be righteous and you have to read your scriptures and you have to pray and you have to be of service and you have to go to seminary and you have to do all this stuff. But as a 12-year-old girl, you're standing up every Sunday and reciting the
theme.
What is that?
Young Women's Theme.
Yeah. We are daughters of our Heavenly Father who loves us, and we love Him. Yeah. We stand as witnesses of God at all times and in all things
and in all places.
And in all places as we strive to live the young one's values, which are faith, divine nature, individual worth, knowledge, choice and accountability, good works, and integrity. I don't remember the rest. I know it's something we believe as we come to act upon these values, we will be prepared to keep keep sacred covenants.
Receive the ordinances of the temple and
enjoy the blessings of exaltation.
Yeah, which has been changed.
Yeah, right? It's been changed. But you're standing up every single Sunday saying that.
Exactly. Yep.
It's almost like the Pledge of Allegiance, but it's like the Pledge of Womanhood or something.
And your soul. Yeah.
Right. And you're doing that from age 12 on. And I was so obsessed with boys, and I would write in my diary, and like it's hard to distinguish between like what is normal teenage obsession with boys and what is like the Mormon side of obsession with boys. But I wrote about boys in my journal all the time, and it's not like I ever like I was super shy, and I still, it's still crazy. I'm still very shy in public with boys. Like I don't all of the relationships that I've met online because I don't have like a comfort level of like just talking to people in public. So like I would always write about these boys, but I never really did anything about it. This guy moved into our ward. His name was Keith. Keith moved into our ward in 10th grade, and the first second I saw him, I was like smitten, and I was like, all I did is write in my journal about him and how I like pined after him, but I felt too like broken for him to like me. So I never really, I just wrote about him in my journal all the time. And then I was obsessed with dating. So by the time I turned 16, I was just really hoping that I would go on a date. But nobody ever asked me because I was like this shy girl that was like kind of introverted, and I was not going to talk to this guy in person and try. But I did do weird things like in seminary. I won early morning seminary because we lived in a state other than Utah. Okay. So you have to get up at 5 a.m. You have to be there by 5 a.m. So for Valentine's Day one year, I made everyone Valentine's, but I made him significantly bigger. Like, come on, that's so obvious. So obvious. But like, he wasn't biting. But finally, there's this other guy that moved into the ward, and like, he took a liking to me, and he really was kind of aggressive with me. I was walking down the hallway at school, and like at high school, and he stopped in the hallway, and he looked me up and down, and he said something like, nice. And I was like, okay. Like, I really didn't know how to deal with that. And like, eventually he like asked me out, and we went on a date. And this is the weirdest thing. This is how sheltered I was as far as like, I'm not going to make out with anybody. I'm not going to do anything. I was just so by the book. And so that's another way that I related with what you were saying is like trying to be chaste and whatever. But like, so this guy takes me on the date, and he's trying to put the moves on me the entire time. We go see a movie. I wasn't strong enough to just be like, could you take me home? Like, I was just kind of like trying to get through it. Then he invited me back to his place or whatever, and like his parents were divorced. He lived with his dad. He takes me into his bedroom, and I talked to my mom later about this, and I was like, I shouldn't have gone in his bedroom and like whatever, blah blah blah. But like in his bedroom, I'm not kidding, and this is where the church is such a dichotomy. Okay, like it's so oppressive that people don't know what to do with themselves. He takes me into his room, and we're watching an R-rated movie, which I didn't even watch R-rated movies. But I made this exception for him because I was kind of like trying to be a people pleaser in a way, and I didn't want to rock the boat and all this stuff. But we're literally watching a movie sitting on his bed, and he's again trying to put the moves on me. I'm not biting. Okay, this is the weirdest part. He had temple pictures all around his room. All around his room. Oh my gosh. Plastered all around his room. But you know what his choice of lighting was?
Black light.
Red light bulbs. Red light bulbs. Red light bulbs.
What?
It's like, someone's having some cognitive dissonance here. Like, and I didn't know what that term meant at the time, but I'm like, this is like red light bulbs and like temple pictures everywhere. But he's making me watch an R-rated movie, and he's trying to put the moves on me. What is this? The date is over, and like he takes me home, whatever. Nothing happened. Even though he kind of wanted something to happen. But then I became obsessed with him. Oh, no. I was obsessed. Like, I was, like, going to try to fix him, and I was going to try to make him see the light and be more active and all this kind of stuff. And, like, I would write him. He asked me on one other date, and then he stood me up. Ow. And I would write him notes, and I would go and drive and put them in his mailbox. Like, I was a stalker. I was a legitimate stalker.
How to lose a guy in 10 days.
No, 100%. Like, that's the thing is the church. And I'm not saying that I have no responsibility in this. But I really wasn't guided in a way where it's like, hey, you know what? Instead of as a 12-year-old learning that you need to prepare for a husband right this moment, and you need to think about everybody that you date as being your potential spouse, how about you just like go and enjoy your life and like figure out what you want and like figure out what's going to be good for you. But no, because there's this like subservience mentality for women, it's like we are being groomed in a way. It's like we are being trained to kind of be that intense. And even men were trained in that way, because like they would go on one date with a woman and like be like, the spirit talked to me and we're supposed to get married.
God.
It's like
That is so
insane.
lame. That's so lame. That's the. I mean, seriously.
I'm gonna take you on a date to the temple. I'm gonna take you on a date to the temple ground.
That's just, to me, that's kind of like that just seems about as lame as being like, yeah, I checked my horoscope and it says we're supposed to be together.
We're compatible.
I asked my magic 8-ball, is she my wife?
Yes.
Right. And like, I mean, to be fair, no, it doesn't. But like that fantasy thinking, you know, it's a lot of fantasy thinking, and it really doesn't get anybody anywhere, and it sets people up for failure.
It does.
I was the type of girl at night in my room where if I was alone in my room, because I did share a bedroom with sisters sometimes, but if I was alone in my room, I couldn't go to sleep because I thought spirits were all around me trying to influence me to be evil.
Oh.
Like, I really thought there were spirits in my room. I thought that, like, I couldn't have even one limb out of from under my blanket. And then when I was upset about something, I would just cry and, like, sob till my eyes were puffy. And, like, it became this kitchen sinking thing where everything just came up all at once, and I would just cry and cry and cry. And I was not happy, and I was under a lot of stress and a lot of anxiety. And the church really kind of like capitalized on that, as far as like emotionally capitalized on that, because I really thought that I was unworthy. I thought that I was not a worthy person, that I wasn't doing enough, wasn't being enough, I wasn't reading the scriptures enough, I wasn't praying enough. So in relation to, you know, relationships, I really prayed this because of what I witnessed with my family. I really prayed that I would be happy someday, and that I would find my eternal companion, and that I would have a family, and that I would never repeat those same cycles. That's what I prayed for every single day. And I was taught that if you have enough faith, and if you try to do good works, and you try to be a good person, and you try to be righteous, and you listen to worthy music, and you don't watch rated movies, and you go to church every Sunday, and you go to Young Women's, and you try to talk to your friends about Mormonism and give them a freaking Book of Mormon with your testimony and all this stuff. Like, there's some stuff that I didn't do like that, because I lived in another state where, you know, there were people all different religions, and I did have friends that were other religions. I didn't try to shove it down their throats, but that was still very much part of my identity. And I just really kind of feel like my childhood was robbed from me. I don't feel like I had teenage years that were worth a lot. I didn't have fun. I didn't go to prom. Nobody asked me to prom.
Me too.
Yeah, and I heard that in your podcast, and like I was super awkward about boys, because again, I had all this emphasis on, I have to think of them as a potential eternal companion. I can't think of them as anything else. I can't think of them as just, we're gonna see where this goes and see if we're compatible. And to this day, I've been divorced twice. I have dated a lot in the last few years, and I've really, really slowed down, like to the point of nothingness, because I'm really trying to like get my shit together and like really try to figure out what I want and and how to set boundaries and all that kind of stuff. But like to this day, I still am trying to digest, like, should I date someone with the intention of being in a committed relationship, or do I have the ability to just date someone casually and see where it goes? And I really feel like I don't have the ability to date casually, and I think that's partially because of my personality, but partially because I feel like it was never taught to me, like, oh, just go and have fun and see if you like someone or not.
Right.
Don't take it so serious, you know?
Right.
To be fair, and to give a little bit of context, I've always been exactly the same way. Like, and I didn't. That's not entirely like church conditioning. I never understood how to do that either.
Okay, well, that makes me feel better, because it really is hard to like separate what your personality is versus what you were conditioned with.
Yeah.
It's really hard. And I've been out of the church since I had my name officially removed in 2013, but I hadn't been to church consistently since 2005 or 2006. And I made the decision that I didn't believe in it anymore in 2007. So it's been a minute. You know, but I'm still grappling with all of it.
Yeah. I don't know. I feel like kind of the same way. It, you don't know what's normal for outside of the church, and you don't know what's you. And like what would be you or something. I don't know. I don't know how to explain it, but you did good.
No, yeah, that's what it is. I mean, it's just hard to like separate what is my identity versus how is my identity still being informed by the church?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's difficult. So can I ask you about the kind of priesthood holders? You said you'd been divorced twice. What was your experience with the priesthood holders in your the men in your life that you were married to, as far as their ability to, guide the family or whatnot?
Yeah, so it's funny because kind of much like the room with the red light bulb on the temple pictures, that was about the same as the dichotomy between my two husbands.
Oh no.
I mean, I'm very much a pendulum person apparently. So middle ground is not my forte. I'm working on that a lot, believe me. Like, I've been working on that with therapy, and like I've been sober for a few years, and like I'm trying to be not all or nothing in my life, but I do feel like sometimes you have to have a pendulum swing a little bit so that you can eventually like kind of settle into a middle ground.
Yeah.
But yeah, so with all that background on my teenage view of relationships and whatever, and being kind of obsessive over boys sometimes, and it's not like I just was obsessive over that one boy. There's multiple boys that I got obsessed over, and like even one guy did eventually ask me on a date, and then I again started writing him letters. So
oh no.
It's like way too intense. But anyways, so the way that I met my first husband was online. So there was a Mormon dating site that I went on, and I honestly, like, it was a new world for me because I had all these, I was pretty thin back then because I had eating disorders and all that kinds of fun stuff. And I took diet pills and I overexercised and all this other fun stuff. So I was pretty thin, and I got a lot of attention. That was like really weird for me because I was like, I had these people messaging me, and sometimes they were a lot older than me, and sometimes they were around my age. But I still very much as weird and intense as I could have been with people before that really weren't like reciprocating. I still very much live in fear with talking to men. I have an innate, like an ingrained fear of men, and I still do. But like, I met my first husband, we started talking, and he lived in another state, and so it was kind of a long distance thing. But he was really sweet and kind and like attentive and like, you know, romantic and all this kind of stuff. And I really, really liked him, and I really enjoyed our connection. I really honestly felt like he accepted me for who I was, and like he accepted my past. And I did 100% trauma dump on him. I 1000% trauma dumped on him because I really wanted to feel accepted for my past, and that was a huge source of shame with Mormonism as well. Is that I would sit in the pews with my mom, and she's a single mom, and even though she was devout and she was trying to do her best, there still was a kind of that stain there, that stigma of like, oh, you come from a broken family. And it didn't matter the reasons I came from the broken family. You know, it didn't matter what the circumstances were. It was her sitting at a bench with her kids, not being married, and everybody else was there, you know, supposedly happy families and their 5, 6, 7, 12 kids, however many. And like, you know, they're supposedly living the Mormon dream, and I came from this broken family, and I felt broken. I felt like I already had this stain on me, and I felt like I had to make my case for someone to be with me. And I honestly kind of feel like that's why I wrote all those weird notes to these guys, because I was trying to feel accepted by them. I was trying to like almost make a case for myself, like I am worthy of love. But I honestly didn't feel like I wasn't inside, but I still wanted to believe that I was. So anyways, start talking more and more with this guy, and eventually we decided to meet in person. And one thing that kind of informed us taking it more seriously is like when my mom saw him, and we go to pick him up from the airport, and my mom like almost immediately starts getting teary, and she's like, almost like it's a revelation or something.
Oh, no.
like she sees him, and she's like, it's like the gates of heaven open, and she's like, oh, that's my boy. That's the one that's gonna marry my daughter. And it's like, what I mean, it's not like she said all of that right then, but it was almost like confirmation bias later on, like, oh, you're getting married. And these are the things that I felt when I saw him, and like, you know, whatever. And I felt them too. Was like, I liked him. I liked being around him. But there was also this like sense of nervousness when I met him. I was scared. But I pushed through it because I liked him, and I had never been in a relationship before. I was literally 22. 22. I had never been in a legitimate relationship with anybody. Only the fantasy and intrigue that I'd had with all my weird boy obsessions that never really went anywhere. And I had never been kissed. I hadn't done it. And so he was my first kiss. And it was really awkward and weird, and I didn't know what I was doing, and I couldn't breathe. Oh, no. I didn't know how to breathe while kissing. Like, it was the most awkward thing.
The church
and like,
doesn't teach you how to breathe through your ears.
No, they don't.
That's,
no, they
don't. It's an important
and
skill.
You're not and besides that, you're not supposed to French kiss. That's a big no. Don't French kiss. You just have to do maybe a little peck or something.
Yeah. I think one time I heard somebody say the way you kiss your brother, just. And I was like, well, wait a minute,
Why did I have to compare it to that? Why did I have to compare it to that? That's nasty. So he was my first kiss, and things progressed quickly from there. He moved down to Utah, and we dated more. He actually lived with family. different family members, not on the same house.
Mhm.
And we dated, and he came really close to my family. And, we were from two different worlds, too. He came from this small town, and, like rural,
Mhm.
and I more urban, And so we didn't really, I wasn't mindful about it at all. I just was like, oh, and then plus, as a side note, I had already gone through the temple.
Okay.
Because when I turned 21, I decided I wanted to get my garments. I wanted to take on those covenants and all that kind of stuff. And that was its own weird thing. And then after I went through the temple, I had a cousin tell me, well, now that you've gone through the temple, you're going to get married soon, or you're going to find your spouse or whatever. It's like some weird mystical thing. Like, what about all the sweet spirits that go on missions and get their temple garments and they don't find a husband because they're called sweet spirits?
I know. Do you know what that means, hon? Sweet spirit.
No.
It means they're homely, but they're really nice.
Oh, jeez. Oh, wait, you've told me that before. That was a thing.
Oh, she's a sweet spirit. She's a sweet spirit. Oh, by the way, I know. Oh, did you go on a mission?
I did.
Yeah. So, did you when you were interviewing to go on your mission? Did you get feedback about? Oh, well, are you dating anybody? And did you get anything like that?
I don't remember because I was just send me on a freaking mission. I just want to go. And I had actually just broken up with a guy. So yeah, I think the bishop knew. He's like, well, okay, she did try.
Oh, okay. Well, when I went to the interview to try to go on a mission, I'm not kidding. You cannot make this stuff up. I go to the bishop. Again, I'm pretty thin and I'm looking pretty good, I guess, whatever. And I go in and I interview, and he's just kind of sitting there like, it's super intimidating having someone sit behind a desk and kind of just stare you down. He wasn't trying to be intimidating, but like he also didn't really seem like he was hearing me or listening to what I was saying. He said to me, he's like, so why do you want to go on a mission? And blah, blah, blah. And I, said the standard stuff, I guess. And then he said, well, are you dating anyone right now? I'm like, no, I'm not dating anybody. And, I'm sure other things are said, but the thing that I really remember is him saying, well, I feel impressed.
Yeah.
Impressed. I feel impressed.
Yeah.
To set you up on a date with my nephew.
Oh my.
He's just zoning out the entire interview, and he's
pretty
just
much.
Oh no.
That's so weird.
It's so weird, but you trust these persons.
Yeah.
You trust these people.
And they say things like impression, and so you know that it's been inspired by
It's
God.
inspired. God is talking to them. God is talking to them. So, anyways, I'm like, and honestly, I was a little intrigued by that.
Right.
I'm like, oh, really? Like, this is before I met my ex and like all this stuff. So, anyways, he sets me up on this date with this guy. It's a double date because heaven forbid. And there was no chemistry, zero chemistry. He didn't really know what to talk about with me. I didn't really know what to talk about with him. It was a no-go. And then by that time, I was kind of like deflated to even go on a mission. But I still wanted to go through the temple and get my garments and all this. My magical underwear that if
you get shot, you're fine.
Yeah, exactly. If I got into a fire, if I was in a fire, everything else would burn. My whole body would be a crisp except for the part where I was wearing the garment.
Walking on your knees, little stubs.
Are you being serious? Is
Yeah,
that a real...
absolutely. 100%.
That's a real thing.
It is. In fact, they say that you go on through the temple before you go on a mission for the protection of having the garments, the physical and spiritual protection. Otherwise, we would just go. But we have to have that because.
So wait a minute. So the thing that I'm that blows my mind. The idea that people, grown adults like buy that. A, but B, then also it begs the question, like, if the church has magic clothing that literally, like, I just thought it was, kind of a spiritual thing. But if they're hoarding a stockpile of like the special chainmail that like Frodo wears, like if they've got like if they're just hanging on to that instead of like just giving it to people, that's
still pretty selfish.
kind of a dick move. Like that's, I mean,
don't you know that you have to be worthy to wear it though? You have to go through this whole interview.
Yeah.
You have to go through this whole interview with the bishop and the stake president to even go to the temple. You have to get a temple recommend. Then you can go to buy the garments. You have to show your temple recommend.
Mm-hmm.
So it's basically just like a VIP pass, basically. So you have to be paying a full tithe.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be doing
caffeine.
all the things to be able to worthily, if that's even a word, wear the garments.
Yeah, and if you're not, then they're not going to help you.
No, exactly.
It's just not terribly Christ-like. I feel like if Jesus had a huge if a box fell off the back of the truck and it was full of mithril chain shirts.
Mithril?
Yeah. And he was just I'm only giving these out to the goodest boys and girls. And it just seems a little, I don't know, prejudicial. I don't know. It doesn't seem like Jesus would be like, you get a chain shirt and you get a magic elven shirt and you get a
you get a prize. You get a prize.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Not hoarding them like Scrooge.
Yeah. Well, but that's the whole concept of the church, right? Is like worthiness, and if you do A, B, C, and D, then you'll get into the celestial kingdom. If you don't do A, B, C, and D, but you still kind of believe and you're kind of a Jack Mormon, but you still kind of go to church and you're sort of a good person, then you'll get the terrestrial kingdom. If you're a bad person,
like Hitler.
You're gonna go to the celestial kingdom. But by golly, if you knew that the church was true, you went through the temple covenants, and then you turned against them, then you're in Satan's power the rest of your life. It literally said that in the video, and I don't know if they've changed it.
Well,
the temple video.
I saw it, but I don't know if they've changed it by now. But yeah,
and I mean, they shove that down your throat.
Yeah, and that was one of the things that you're afraid of when you start to question or leave the church. You're like, oh my gosh, I'm leaving all of this. I'm going to be cursed for the rest of my life and eternity.
My magic shirt's not going to work anymore.
I'm going to get burned.
The sword won't glow when the goblins are around.
It's 100%. That's what it is. And do you know? So that's further down in the discussion when I left the church. But I still, even after I left the church, even after I didn't believe in it, I still thought I was going to be hit by lightning. I thought I was going to get a disease. I thought that I was going to leave my 4-year-old daughter behind. Like, I really thought all of those things. And as far as the garments go, they actually teach you that you have to dispose of them in a certain way. Mm-hmm. And I followed that to the T. You have to take, so they have these little symbols on the chest and the knee and the belly button and the knees, or one knee. I don't know if it's the left knee or the right knee. But they're just
it's
little...
the knee closest to God.
I guess. But it's just this extra embroidery to make the mark. And they taught you that you have to cut them out. You have to cut it out of the garment and burn it.
Yeah.
You have to burn those symbols.
Is that a problem at all? Like, I mean, I don't know exactly how it works as far as like burning clothing goes, but could you get in trouble with like the city or the county? Like seriously, like they're like, you don't have a permit to burn garments.
I would literally put it in a pan. The little pieces. I wouldn't burn the whole garment.
Just the symbols.
I would throw away the rest of the garment.
They're officially like rags at that point without the symbols.
Yeah. So I would just cut out the little pieces and then I'd burn them in a pan. And luckily there was no fire or mass destruction of any sort. So I went through the temple before I met my ex, and then we're dating and everything. And as we're dating, okay, so this is where, like, I mentioned that he was my first kiss and all this stuff. But this is the first time that I really felt like what hormones were, and I really had nobody sat me down and talked to me about any of that. It's the first time that I really had to be like, okay, what's going on with my body? I don't understand this. And this is probably the hardest thing for me to be able to communicate, or properly communicate, to where I feel like they're understanding the gravity of what my mentality was as far as the church goes, and like sexual identity and the shame associated with it. Because my ex and I, we would make out and do zipper friction or whatever it is, or petting, because they always say petting.
That's
like
say.
That's so good. Such a gross term.
Petting? Really? Like petting a cat? That's really weird. Like, no. But like, and I felt so much shame every time we went overboard that I would make him pray with me.
Oh.
I would make him pray with me. And he would do it because, he's Mormon too. And he wants to feel like he's worthy too, or whatever. And to be honest, I went and I would go confess to the bishop. I would confess to the bishop. Oh, I went too far and I feel so bad and I blah, blah, blah. And then, honestly, looking back, the bishop was like, you're fine. Like, he wasn't saying, I was like, because I didn't do anything that he probably hasn't heard a million times before. And because I didn't have like full blown sex, and there was no like, I didn't do anything like super risque, because I didn't do anything like that. Like, it was just kind of like, okay, it's fine. I didn't even get like the pretty, I mean, he didn't say it in those terms, but like, he's just kind of like being stoic about it, And now when I'm looking back on it, I'm like, he heard a million things.
Yeah.
He heard everything way worse than what I ever thought I did and whatever. And I know that you had mentioned in the last podcast about the relationships and I know Jonathan had mentioned it as well, about when you're actually like confessing these things to these men, that it's really kind of perverse.
Yeah.
And knowing what I know now about men and in general, obviously I don't think every man, it's not like it's the same, but like based on my experience with dating and also in the relationships I've had, I just don't think that there's any ounce of innocence with an older man talking to a young adult or even a teenager.
Especially a teen.
No, especially a teen. Like that's there's nothing. There's no way to excuse that. You can't dress that up as being like innocent. It's gross.
No,
it's super gross. Like if you're a doctor, there's an explanation there. But otherwise, like, no, it's disgusting. I mean, and even then, like with that kind of thing, you'd probably have a woman doctor talking to you, not some old dude talking about sexual history stuff as a teenager. Like,
right.
It's just because it's super uncomfortable. Why is it different in the church?
Yeah.
It's gross.
It is gross. And the thing is like, I haven't read any recent stats on the porn consumption in Utah, but like it's everything that I have read about it in the past, it's always much higher in oppressed groups.
Yeah.
It's much higher and it's more perverse and it's usually more extreme than just the run of the mill, every day. If someone is not oppressed. I mean, it's just kind of insane. And like, it's not like it just happens in Mormonism. There's sexual abuse in many religions, as we know. So this whole emphasis on not being in touch with your sexuality, not being in touch with your body, not kind of being hush hush about oh, you're going to feel these things and you're going to feel these things and, you know, whatever, blah, blah, blah. There's no openness about it. And nobody knows what they're doing. I didn't know what the hell I was doing.
And once you start feeling those, you're like, what is this and what am I supposed to do? There's no education to help you get through that moment. I mean, like, even if you're preaching abstinence, if you teach them why or how or what to expect, the likelihood of abstinence is a lot higher than just saying, nope, don't learn, don't do anything, you know. Education is the key.
Yeah, but they don't want you to be educated. I mean, they even said, and this is kind of a side note, but one of the reasons I was like solidified in my leaving the church is because I think Boyd K. Packer or something came out with this, like, during conference, something about like the great enemies of the church are feminism and education.
Yeah.
No.
Well, it's like something like that. And I know that it was shortly after I left I think it was shortly after I left the church because I started going to school and getting my bachelor's, and I started like taking gender studies classes and all this stuff. And I think that those kinds of things really solidified my leaving. But like I just and then, of course, after I left, there's been so many weird doctrines that they've come up with, like gay parents and all this.
Yeah.
It's just insane.
Kids can't.
But yeah. Yeah, kids can't. Is that still in effect? Do you know? Did they change it?
Know. I thought after a little while they did change it because there was such an uproar and a mass exodus out of the church because of it. So I think they did, but I'll have to verify that.
Yeah, I don't know either. So we get married, and of course in the temple, when you get married, you do hear about the, you know, follow your husband as he follows the Lord. And it really is like, okay, even if you're going to follow that, it's still technically supposed to be as he follows the Lord. So who's deciding if he's following the Lord or not? Is that just because
that's a good point.
He's a priesthood leader, and so he's following the Lord, or you know. So, anyways, I never really felt super threatened by that because I'm like, oh, he's a priesthood leader, and then plus there's this benevolent sexism that happens in Mormonism where, you know, the man is always like, I don't deserve my wife. She's much more spiritual. She's much more spiritual than I am.
Yeah. She's the neck that turns the head, and
yeah.
Yep.
So they make you feel it's like this Madonna complex where you feel like you have to be this Madonna figure as a wife, as a mother, and there's this expectation for you to be that way. So, anyways, I was like, so as I mentioned, we lived in different states when we first met, and he moved to Utah, but he eventually wanted to go back to his home state, and we had talked about it, but I wasn't like completely against it. So it's not like I was like, you know, I'm just never gonna go back there. But it became a source of contention because I got pregnant. And, I think I had mentioned something like, oh, well, we can maybe go there when I finish school, or because I was trying to get my general studies done and all this stuff. And by the way, like, I didn't even get my bachelor's until I was almost 30. Because this is the course of events that happened. So I got married, I get pregnant right away, and it's almost like because I got pregnant so fast, it's like all bets were off. And we're gonna move, and we're gonna go be in that state. And I objected. I wanted to be around my mom.
Right.
I wanted
brand new baby.
I wanted help from my family, and I wanted to be around family. And I felt like because he was the priesthood leader, and because there was going to be a house up there available for us that is family owned and all this kind of stuff, whatever, we were going to pay them rent and all this stuff. And so that part was kind of exciting. Like, I was trying to like convince myself that it was good because we're going to have a house and we're going to, you know, whatever. And I would do my best to make a good home and all this stuff. But like, it set so many, it was a domino effect in my life to feel forced to move up there just because he's the priesthood leader. And I had already So I've had eating disorders my whole life, and I've struggled with weight, and I've never had a good relationship with my body or my body image until, I went through a bunch of treatments and therapy and stuff, and I'm finally getting some grasp on that in my 40s. But back then I really didn't have good self-esteem. I didn't have good body image. I used, the only thing I ever found comfort in was food, because of course you can't drink or smoke or do any of that fun stuff. You can eat lots of copious amounts of ice cream, but you can't drink or smoke.
Destroy your heart.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. You can have a lot of green Jello with carrots in it, but to be fair, I really didn't experience that much green Jello, but it's just a running joke. But so this domino effect that happened, we moved to my baby's 3 weeks old, and we're moving, and we're moving out of this apartment that we had in Utah, and my ankles are swollen like baseballs.
Because of
and
the pregnancy.
we're moving. Yeah. And we're moving. I had edema for months after I delivered. It took forever for them to stop swelling.
Oh.
But anyways, so I'm moving with a 3-week-old baby, and I'm moving away from my family, and I fell into the worst depression of my life when we moved up there. And it didn't help that I had a mother-in-law and a father-in-law that were extremely intrusive. They didn't know boundaries. They really didn't like me that much, to be honest, because I had gained some weight, and because I didn't have a lot of self-esteem, I was trying all these fad diets and diet pills, and because that's what used to work for me, but nothing was really working because none of that could catch up or buffer any of the train wreck that was going on in my life and my emotional state and my mental state. So it was all for naught. It was just worthless. But I still would try to grasp at straws. And so his mom was super into herbs and nutrition. And she was super skinny, and she was and so there were times where I would be oh, do you know anything I can take? And she'd write this whole list of vitamins and give me this whole box of vitamins. Anyway, I don't want to make this a former mother-in-law session, but it was really hard living there, and I didn't feel accepted by his family, and because I was so depressed, and I feel like I had postpartum as well. I'm sure I had postpartum depression. I took care of my daughter as far as feeding her and bathing her and doing what I needed as far as those things go, but I didn't go take her on walks outside. I did the bare minimum, and that's a huge source of guilt for me even today. That I was in survival mode. I was in survival mode with her for so many years, and I barely feel like I'm getting out of survival mode with her, and she's a grown up. That is something that I'm never that is time I'm never going to be able to get back. And I know that my own mom has a ton of guilt from things that we went through as kids, and I've 100% absolved her of any of that. And we have an amazing relationship, but it's extremely difficult to live your entire life praying to God that you want the stable family. You want that eternal family after going through so much pain yourself and witnessing the broken family that you're in and continuing broken family. And just the core wound that comes from that. And just this faith that I had as a kid and a teenager that I was going to someday be in a loving relationship with a priesthood leader and have a family and be happy as a homemaker and be happy as a wife. I was miserable. I did not know how to put a meal together. I did not know how to clean. I remember at one point, because my ex was working, he's working because that's what the men do. They work and it's, I don't have any problem with like traditional households. If that's what both people decide, if they both decide it and it's a mutual decision and it's 100% like the other person doesn't feel pressured into it, then go for it. Like I have nothing against that. But like I've always enjoyed working. It's always given me a sense of purpose. And I went from that to being 100% full-time mom and not having any support around me and feeling like I had to have this home-cooked meal for my husband every time he came home, not knowing how to live up to that kind of pressure. And yes, I was a mom that wasn't doing anything during the day. I didn't clean. I didn't really cook. I did the bare minimum. And I did some things that I regret too, because I wasn't a perfect wife. I made so many dumb mistakes and coped in ways that I shouldn't have coped. But like, I did not want to move there, and I don't know what would have happened if we would have stayed in Utah. I don't know that anything necessarily would have been completely different. It could have still, all of that could have still played out in different ways, regardless of where I lived. But like, I mourn the loss of those. I mourn the loss of those years for myself because I was so out of touch with who I was. I completely lost myself. And I felt lost, and I felt like completely unworthy of anything. And I gained 100 pounds in a year. 100 pounds. That's pretty difficult to do. I mean, you have to be really dedicated. And not just like, and it's also because there was no movement. I wasn't moving during the day. I wasn't walking. I wasn't active. I think like I would go to Walmart or something and walk around a little bit, but that's like the extent of it. I mourn the loss of those years with my daughter and mourn the loss of those years for me. And it was a very lonely time. So eventually we weren't getting along. That you have these expectations of like what a marriage is going to be and like everything that they tell you in the church. And then when push comes to shove, you actually see the reality of it. And is this actually going to work? And it wasn't working because I was a hot mess and he really wasn't all put together himself. And I don't think he's a bad person. I don't have any ill will towards him. I want everyone to have their process of dealing with things and coping with things. And I don't think that there's anything wrong with someone feeling a certain way about like how things happen in a marriage or not. Like, but as far as like level of fault, we both had our things, and we both were really young, and we both made mistakes, and we both did dumb things. And I appreciate that he's the father of my daughter, and I appreciate that, you know, he always paid child support. He always did his best to be involved in her life, and I appreciate all of that. But he does still have some bitter feelings towards me about, even though when we talk, like we get along and we're fine. But I know that he still has those things because he'll bring them up. So yeah, our marriage didn't last that long. It was like 3.5 years total. There was one point where we separated and I went to Utah, and I was trying to stay with family. I actually stayed with the wife of one of my uncles who had passed. And I lived with her for a couple months. And then eventually I went to go stay with my sister, and first I went to go stay with my sister, and then that didn't work out, and so I stayed with that aunt. And I would try to talk to my ex about like our marriage and like try to vocalize what I needed and all this stuff, and it just really wasn't. I just didn't really feel heard, and I felt eventually like I just wanted to give in and just have it be over with, because I didn't want to continue to go through what I was going through in Utah. It was just very scary, and like I really didn't have any income. I was depending on him to still help me with like needs that I had financially, and so eventually went back up to that state, and we reunited. And initially it was okay. And there was this big emphasis on, well, if we can get out of this state and not be around family that's kind of toxic and whatever, then maybe we have a chance. But by the time he got a job in another state, and by the time we moved, it was too late, because I remember on the drive, just us packing up the house that his parents owned, and on the drive over across the country, pretty much, me in one car with my daughter and him driving like a diesel truck or whatever. I remember him saying something to me, like, and he had this look on his face of like kind of disgust or whatever, that I wasn't being the expected wife or mother. And I just kind of mentally checked out at that point, and I was like, and once we got into that new state, I don't know, I think I even told him on the way over that I'm done, that I'm done, and then it became this thing where I had to get an apartment in that new state, and I didn't have a car at the time because our car had broken down, and I ended up, we were in that state for about 6 months, and I didn't have a car, and I ended up literally going to a dealership, and I had a credit card, and I charged a used van $4,500. I guess we had enough line of credit for that, and I put it on a credit card, so that I had a form of transportation, so that I could slowly, like, crawl my way out of this. And eventually, I called my dad and asked for support, and I found a way to move back to Utah. Initially, eventually I got my own apartment that he helped pay for a while, until I got a job, and then slowly rebuilt from there. But yeah, that was my priesthood experience. Now, I'm not gonna dive into my second husband that much. All I know is like that I went from, and the reason I actually fell for my second husband is because he was very validating of my experiences in the church, and he understood my perspective, because he had been in the church, and he had been active, and he had gone on a mission. So I feel like he was kind of my lifeline as I was having questions about the church, and I would ask family, I would try to talk to family about it. And this was before a lot of my family had left the church themselves. So I really I felt kind of estranged from my family, because I was bringing these things up, these questions that I had. And he was always the lifeline. He was always someone I could go to and be like, well, what about this? And what about that? And he was super smart. And he was almost like encyclopedia smart. Like and I honestly felt kind of stupid around him. But I never really thought of myself as smart before. And there's this guy that's like telling me about, I'm venting to him about things in the church, and he's like basically validating me and making me feel heard and understood and whatever. And so I went from being this super staunch, like by the book Mormon, or if I wasn't always 100% by the book, I would beat myself up to a pulp about it and go admit like things to the bishop and stake president and all these things that I thought I was doing so horribly wrong and I wasn't.
Right.
And so I went from this priesthood leader marriage or whatever, typical temple marriage, to being in a relationship with someone who had been Mormon and now identified as atheist. And actually that was super cathartic for me at the time, because I'm like, oh, well, because I had always told myself if I didn't believe in the church, then I wasn't going to believe in God. And I was going to be, I had always told myself that.
Yeah, I got that same period of life too. Like, it just had that. There's either the church and God or there's nothing. I didn't know what else it was.
Yeah, it was so, and so that's like the pendulum I'm talking about is like, I went from being super devout Mormon to being super like angry. I was angry. I was mad. I was posting things on Facebook all the time, blocking a bunch of family, pissing off my brothers, pissing off my family. And like, eventually they all left anyways. But like in the beginning, I felt very estranged from my family because I had, decided I was not going to be Mormon anymore, and I was going to go this like angry, like atheist route. And now I went through my little angry phase and posting things, and I would go onto forums like xmormon.com or whatever it is, and I found like community there as far as like, people that I could relate to. But eventually it came to the point where I didn't need that anymore because I'd been out of it for so long, and it wasn't necessary. But only after divorcing my second husband, I started like, because I had to really inventory my life at that point and be like, what the fuck, and like, what am I not dealing with? And there was a time, there were a few years where I was probably like, I think the only definition you could put on it was that I was a little bit insane for a few years, because I was so out of my body. I was so out of touch with my emotions, and I really just didn't want to deal with anything. And I was masking a lot of stuff with alcohol and like whatever else. And like, I eventually got to the point where I really wanted to like start taking like a real solid inventory on my life. And I got into therapy, and I eventually got sober, and I started, being a participant in a recovery program, and then eventually I started like being more healthy and losing some weight and like being more active and all this kind of stuff. And I feel like finally, after all of that, I finally feel like I'm getting a sense of my identity, and I'm again in my 40s, and it's just kind of like, it's a trip to all the deprogramming that you have to go through.
Yeah, I do get the deprogramming thing.
Yeah, and like I'm in a good place now. I have a lot of things that I'm really grateful for, and I have a lot of good things that have happened in my life, and I am not an atheist anymore. That's the weirdest thing to me.
Yeah.
I don't have anything against atheists. But like, one of the things, the difference between my two marriages. My first marriage was very Mormon and like trying to be spiritual and all this stuff. My second marriage was very like no spirituality whatsoever. We didn't even say bless you. We didn't, like it was just kind of like this.
That's pretty extreme.
Exactly. Like, I couldn't say Christians. I had to say Xgens just to like bring my point home, I guess. I don't know. And then plus the thing is that with that pendulum that we're talking about is like, went from being spiritual to being not spiritual at all, and like this really like black or white type of thing, and all or nothing type of thing. But with my second ex, it was really, there was no wonder. There was no sense of wonder. There was no sense of like inquiry about like, it was all very like, oh, this is science and whatever. And yeah, I obviously believe in science and all that, but like, I couldn't watch a ghost hunter show without him saying something annoying. It's like, okay, I understand that there's sound effects here, and I understand that they're embellishing things, and I get all of that, but I still just want to watch a freaking ghost show.
Just be entertained.
And yes, thank you. I like, but like it kind of took the wonder out of it for me. And like when I started my recovery program, they talk about higher power, and like I guess my higher power is nature, or whatever, because and even that was super vague to me, because I'm like, oh, higher power is nature, okay, like are you gonna go hug trees or something? and like but honestly, it's almost became like this self-fulfilling prophecy type of thing, because I started hiking more, and I started, it was a very slow progression. I've never been a super active person, and when it was active, it was more punitive than just like, oh, I'm going to go enjoy a walk, or enjoy a breeze, or enjoy the scenery. And now I actually do enjoy those things. And like, I do feel like maybe there is something after we die, but it's not something it's not something I'm obsessing over. I'm not like worshiping anything, and I'm not praying to anything, and I'm just trying to be a good person, and try to own my shit, and try to keep my side of the street clean, and trying to take accountability for things that I've done. And speaking of my daughter, there was a moment when she turned 18, or maybe even a little bit before, where we had a falling out of sorts, and she was mad. She's mad at me, and I was kind of defensive at first, like with the typical thing that parents do sometimes, like, oh, she's not grateful, and they don't know what I've been through, and blah blah blah, whatever. And it's like, for me to turn that relationship around, because I really thought, even through everything that we'd been through, and yes, I was super young when she was born, and I kind of had to grow up while she was growing up, which that's not very fun for a kid.
Or a parent.
But yeah, or a parent. But like, I really had to, and this is only because of my recovery program. It's only because of my therapy, and it's only because I stopped trying to mask my feelings and stuff things down with other things. I really had to eat some humble pie and just tell her, you know what, I'm gonna sit and I'm gonna listen to what you have to say, and it doesn't mean that I 100% agree with you. It doesn't mean that I 100% agree with your perspective, but I do want to hear you out, and I want to try to validate what you're feeling. And it took a few months to like of back and forth to get our kind of trust level back up again, and our communication to a level that wasn't kind of like vitriolic. But we're in such a good place now, and as much as I still feel some guilt from the way that she had to grow up, and the kind of like whiplash that she had to go through growing up, we also have a really beautiful relationship now. And I know that I have a very beautiful relationship with my own mom, and it's one of the most precious relationships I have besides my daughter. And like, people do recover, and you could go through such traumatic things. And I know a lot of people have gone through a lot more traumatic things than I've gone through, but like, the church for me was traumatic. It wasn't good for someone with my personality that beat myself up about everything that I did wrong. And really, like, I've always been super introspective. So combining that with hearing at church that if you're feeling a certain way, if you're feeling depressed, if you're sad, if you're this, if you're that, you're not doing enough, you're not serving enough, you're not being enough, you're not reading the scriptures enough, you're not
enough.
Yes. And you're never enough. You're never enough. And I'm still, to this day, trying to convince myself that I'm enough. And it is a daily grind. It's a daily grind. It is not easy. And I can only hope that as I continue on this path, that eventually I will have the self-actualization that I've always wanted. and that I won't need a man to validate that for me. I won't need anything else than the little family that I have and the life that I've built and the friends that I've had and the family that I cherish. I don't need to continuously live in the past and focus on the past. And like, I made it out of the church. You made it out of the church. People that act like it's, oh, you just wanted to go and be evil. You just wanted to go listen to that music and that bad music, and you just wanted to go like drink and whatever. I don't even drink anymore. So no, it's not that.
They always
that was one of the hardest
people
things.
want to break it down to being something really simple and easy to digest, like something black and white. It couldn't possibly have any sort of deeper meaning, that it really is just, oh, well, you're selfish, and that's why you're not choosing to
remain,
continue hitting the metrics that we expect.
Right. It's not easy feeling like you lose. I lost a lot of close relationships, family relationships that I had. There's a lot of cousins I don't talk to. There's a lot of cousins that I used to feel like way more closer to, and now, I mean, we're just kind of at a distance. We still talk or, say hi, whatever, on social media, that kind of thing, but it's just not the same. And it is, it's kind of sad, but I am in a good place, and I'm really, really glad that we decided to do this. I really, really have enjoyed this and talking to you, and I'm glad that I could talk to you, Jonathan. And
of course,
even though we haven't talked like one-on-one a lot, I know the story, the general story of how you guys met, and I think you guys have a beautiful relationship.
I'm glad that you let us do this. Thank you for that. You opening up like that.
Yeah, I was really glad to be here, and I appreciate what you guys are doing, and I think it's so important, even if maybe you don't have the full reach that you want right now. I think that anybody that listens to any of the podcasts that you've done so far, if they're going through anything similar, they're going to relate and feel heard and like validated in some way. And I think that was so important for me on my journey out of the church. And yeah, there has been some avoidance. Like when you post these podcasts, I'm like, oh yeah, I want to be supportive and I want to listen, and I want to be like, I want to be there for this effort. But there's still this resistance, like, do I really want to face this part? I really want to face this? Do I really want to like? But it's so important, and it's important to an ongoing journey of healing.
It's hard. It is. It's hard to leave the church. It's hard to even accept your own questions, And I just want people to realize that I don't know, do you, be you, and figure you out. Don't have it be influenced by external forces such as a religion or even a lack of religion.
Yeah, I think you guys are both doing a really good thing. So props to you for that.
Thank you.
Well, Elena is. I'm just here for the pizza.
Yeah, I feed him pizza after this. It's a piece of pepperoni.
It's weird. It's an uncanny thing. I kind of feel like pizza myself right now. All right. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank
hope
you.
You guys have a good night.
You too. Hey,
Okay.
see ya.
Oh yeah.
Bye.